Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we'll be jumping into 10 video games released since 2020 that unexpectedly bombed. Before we get started, we post new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring that bell to be notified about our latest videos. Evil Dead, the game.
Reloading.
Groovy launch, grisly fallout. Saber and boss team's asymmetrical horror slashed out of the gate with roughly 500,000 copies and strong word of mouth. Then the chainsaw sputtered. A year later, the studio cancelled the Switch version and halted new content, leaving only maintenance mode for survivors and deadites. On Steam, the concurrent player count dwindled. Evidently, a great first weekend doesn't equal a lasting horror party, even with Bruce Campbell on the cover. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
A man's backstory is personal, special.
On paper, this looked unstoppable. Rocksteady back with a new DC game, a meaty cast of characters, and there's co-op? How could it fail? Majorly, that's how. Repetitive gameplay, uninspired mission design, and the tasteless way it handled the Justice League resulted in player counts plummeting. Reports of layoffs soon followed, while the game's seasonal updates struggled to reignite interest. Turns out people wanted Batman-style combat, not loot chasing with Captain Boomerang. You'd have hoped WB would have learned their lesson about going down the live service rabbit hole, but who are we kidding? Final Fantasy XVI. 3 million shipped and digitally sold in the first week is a massive opening, especially on one console. Square Enix, on the other hand, didn't seem to think so, as they later told investors that profits didn't meet expectations. That disconnect between strong launch and long-tail reality prompted a strategy shift toward more multi-platform releases. The game itself earned praise for both spectacle and storytelling, but the audience ceiling was lower than the series usually enjoys. The takeaway was simple: the PS5 audience is not enough to satisfy Square Enix, rightly or wrongly.
No pity and no mercy.
Marvel's Midnight Suns.
And welcome or not, this is where fate has determined the Sorcerer Supreme needs to be.
Firaxis delivered an incredibly reviewed tactical RPG with awesome card-based combat. Sure, the relationship system between the characters was lacking, but when battles were this addictive, it was easy to look past. Too bad it piqued the interest of so few. Take-Two CEO said launch window sales were disappointing despite the acclaim, with the game never finding the mass audience its quality deserved. Midnight Suns is the rare superhero tale where the heroes win on Metacritic but lose on the balance sheet. Multiversus. It looked unstoppable at first. The open beta in 2022 rocketed past 10 million players and peaked at more than 150,000 on Steam. Then the beta ended, the team rebuilt, and a full relaunch arrived in 2024, and it all went to multiversal hell. A year later, Warner Bros. Announced that Season 5 would be the final update. Turns out that all that tinkering between the beta and relaunch had resulted in an influx of poor balancing, additional microtransactions, basically the reverse of what it hoped fans from the get-go. For a crossover featuring Batman and Bugs Bunny, the arc from online powerhouse to offline museum piece is downright jaw-dropping.
Victory!
Ghostwire Tokyo. Mixing together spooks and first-person action, what was supposed to be a franchise launcher never really got itself up off the ground. While we're all for a supernatural, spell-slinging showdown against yokai, its high-tier visuals and sound design couldn't save it from being dragged down thanks to a terribly bland open world and boring mission structure, something that sales seem to reflect, as not even Bethesda's vast network could make it a household name. Developer Tango Gameworks seemed to have given up on Ghost, moving on to develop future critical darling Hi-Fi Rush before Bethesda decided to shut down the studio for good. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
For you.
Critics and fans alike both adored this return to agile platforming, fluid combat, and crunchy boss fights, but the initial feedback was apparently muted enough for Ubisoft to decide to disband the core team soon after launch. Over time, the game found more players through word of mouth, becoming one of the most respectable titles under the publisher's banner in years. Sure, it was a slow burn start, but the fact it was able to stand out in a saturated subgenre like Metroidvania and still earn praise is something to be commended. And yet, it still wasn't enough to stop Ubisoft from gutting its future. Ghostrunner 2. The sequel sliced cleaner and faster, yet it couldn't match the first game's buzz. On Steam, its peak concurrent players were a fraction of the originals, even as early revenue reported recouped costs quickly. Parent company Digital Bros highlighted weaker revenue overall in the period where this was the only new release, and the publisher later cut staff to refocus. The wall running was still awesome, but by moving away from the linear nature and tightness of the first game while amping up the margin for error ensured that Ghostrunner 2's flow was easier to break. Guess it couldn't thread the needle this time. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. An excellent game by nearly every account, and yet Square Enix, yeah, you know where this is going. The result was a public pivot toward launching future AAA titles on more platforms, which many read as a response to narrowing the audience at release. Rebirth had the set pieces, the minigames, the nostalgia, and a rich world offering hundreds of hours worth of content, but a combination of exclusivity and Square's grandiose sales expectations left it floundering in the eyes of its creators. Tough crowd.
Here we go.
Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. This one stings. Eidos Montreal's single-player adventure delivered sharp writing, strong combat, and a soundtrack that could wake a celestial. Yet, Square Enix said launch sales undershot its initial expectations despite great reviews. While we all know what Square is like with their bar for financial success, what truly sunk the Guardians was poor timing and communication.
They're really coming out of the woodwork! Just keep them away from me so I can fix this thing!
It was released during one of the MCU's biggest slump periods, and advertising failed to capture just how awesome the gameplay was. Discounts and subscriptions eventually gave it a second life. It's just a shame it had to struggle for so long to get the recognition it deserved.
Mr. Queen of Seknarf 9, you said you'd hear him out. You promised.
Which one of these video game bombs caught you by surprise? Be sure to let us know down in the comments.
She ain't half